Hey, family, peace and blessings, and welcome to Sunday Sitting with Sisters. I am Sister Ro, and I'm in here today with Sister Leah, right?
Yes.
Okay, good. Whew. Because I'll be like messing it up. Okay. So, and today, thank you for joining me, sis. I know you're on your way to sailing. No, on your way to have a little staycation close to home. Um, but today, and as their sisters jumping on now, so we'll give her a minute to get in. I want to have this conversation today about activism because I think that in our community, a lot of people we use that word very lightly. I feel everybody can be an activist. I'm not sure if you're an activist, if there are certain things that make you an activist. Do you have a checklist? Like what makes an activist? And the interesting thing is, I went on the internet and I searched up the history of Black activism. I'll just put that in there. And the first person they came up with was Booker T. Washington. And I thought to myself, well, what? Because that has a time period on it. So it didn't even go back, like to people that we know existed way before Booker T. Washington. And I don't know if we really have a working definition of what an activist really is and how do you really become an activist.
Hmm. Yeah. Um, Activism and being an activist is two different things. So activism is defined as pushing for a particular cause or a particular change, whether it be political, social, economical, whatever it may be. So I think that the word is being used a lot more loosely than it ever has before. I think George
Mhm.
Floyd kind of did that. I think that folks think that if they come out and campaign for a particular reason, that makes them an activist, and it doesn't. So, and I also think that if you get several of us here on this show, we're going to have three different or four different like of our own self examinations as far as what it may mean. So we'll have our own definitions. So it really is, it depends on you. It's going to be different per person on what they feel about activism. There's also advocacy. So being a self advocate, so just somebody just simply making a doctor's appointment for themselves and being able to articulate their needs to a doctor, that's self advocacy. So that's something very simple. Activism and being an activist and going out and fighting for particular causes is something very different.
Right. So let me ask you this. What makes an activist though? Like you said, when the George Floyd thing happened, I can see that everybody, their mama became an activist, but
Everybody.
I don't really know what really, and this is not to be disrespectful, but I don't know what really got done. Like I just, like let me give you another example before you answer that. So when I was about 19 years old, I worked with a bunch of Black women who came out of the Black Power movement and that whole thing. And they were young at the time, they much older than me, but they started off being activists in the 60s and blah, blah, blah. But they also knew in the course of doing that, they had to, they didn't just fight for the right to go to this or do this. They also knew they had the institution built at the same time. That's how they were taught. And so sometimes when I see all of this so-called activism, but seeing very little institutions being built, I wonder if there's a linkage between the two.
I don't think that they know
Or do
that,
you
though. I don't think a lot of people understand the history and the historical content that you're giving it. I don't think a lot of people know that. I don't think, I always say this: in order to be an activist, you have to first be a student. You have to be someone that learns and that's around people that mentor you, somebody that you can shadow. It takes years and years and years to become an activist. You have to first learn the art of what activism is first, and you have to know the history. The history that you're giving, sister, is something that a lot of these people out here don't know and don't get the concepts behind. But you have to be able to be taught. If you're someone that thinks that you got it all figured out and you know everything, and you can come out here and you can make these movements and make these changes, then you're not really being beneficial to the cause overall.
Okay. Okay.
I haven't always been comfortable. I just became comfortable being called an activist within the last maybe few years. And I've been doing this half my life. But I was underneath people that I trusted, that I watched. So for years I watched how this all goes, and how you move, and what you look out for, and how you present yourself to the public. I had to watch this, and I had to sit back and be a student in this before I can just step out and say, okay, this is what I'm going to do with intent. But especially these youngsters, they come out and they think they got it all figured out, and they're giving a bad name to what activism is, quite frankly, in my opinion. I think it is, because
So what is
historical
activism now?
content means everything.
Right on, right on.
Activism is not a
Hold on.
position you give yourself. It's not. Leadership.
Yeah, you
Did
were
you say
breaking
hello?
up a little bit. Okay. No, you was
Oh,
breaking up.
okay.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay. I was saying leadership is not a position or a title that you give yourself. That's something that others give you. So that's another misconception that we see out here a lot, is that people give themselves these titles that are not deserving, not yet at least. So activism is a role that is given to you. It's a position that you've been put in. It's a position that you've been called to do. See, I don't ever call the media or call journalists or call anybody and say, hey, can you interview me? Hey, I got something I want to talk about.
Mm,
Can you come interview me? That's not activism. It's not activism to call somebody and say, hey, I see you got an event coming up. Can I come and speak? That's not activism. Activism is you being called on. That's opportunist,
mm,
but that's not activism. And
got you.
people really don't get that.
Right on. Now that makes a lot of sense in what you said. That makes a lot of sense. So, what inspired? Like for instance, okay, we talked about the George Floyd, I don't really, I understood why people were protesting, but I feel like sometimes I think after a while it becomes like a moment, and we can never really. It seems like it don't really take off when you start to see building. You can have 1,000 people in the street, but if they don't have like a real plan or anything, they're just like 1,000 people in the street. And after a while, they got to go home and go to dinner, or go eat, or life happens, or they gotta, how do we take these moments and really change the things in our community? Like, what would you tell someone who is an activist, young or old? What can they do to sharpen themselves so they can be an effective activist?
So first, I would say that you have to learn. Yeah, there's an art to protesting. There's an art to assimilation. There's an art to all of that, and you have to learn that first. You also have to have the correct agenda. See, people have different agendas. What is your real reason for getting out here and protesting? What's your real reason for getting out here organizing a protest? What's your real reason behind that? Because that matters too. Because everybody has agendas that aren't really beneficial to the movement. And then also, is it a movement or is it a moment? Which one is it? So that also has a lot to do with it as well. And then, we have performative activism. Now, performative activism are those people that get out here and they perform. Simply put, they get out here and they act. They perform. They put on a show. They come out, they act outraged. They're so angry and they're so fired up. And then they go home and they live their normal life and they're not affected by anything that we're out here fighting for. That's performative. And that happens a lot. There's performative activism, there's performative rage. People act like they're so upset about things, but what are you really willing to do? Because there's follow-up to just protesting. And that's one thing that I never want a person to think. I never want to be called a protester, because there's follow-up to protesting, and that's changing
Mm,
laws. Nothing's going to change. Now, the thing about protesting is that's part of our culture. So we can go back in historical times and we know that everything we have by Black people, by way of Black people, is by way of protesting, marching, boycotting. That's how we
yep.
have what we have today. That's our culture. So I love a good protest. Don't get me wrong, and I'm down for a good protest. But what do we do after that? And that's one thing I always like to tell the crowd, because for one, you have to be careful who's leading you, because they'll lead you into the abyss of whatever, and you don't know where you're going. Because the thing about a protest is the crowd follows you. So whoever's leading
Mm,
that protest, you got to make sure that this person is somebody of substance. What are they really leading you into? What exactly are you doing? What is our mission? Because I don't protest without a purpose. So there's a lot of protests that I don't show up to and I won't go to, and I've got a lot of heat because of that. But I don't protest without a purpose, and I'm never going to protest with people I can't trust. Protesting is very dangerous, and it's most dangerous for a Black woman. Most dangerous. So
mm.
there's a lot of different avenues when it comes to that. If you're not willing to do the work after the fact, if you can't sit down and meet with these families that are impacted, that have lost their loved ones, if you can't show up to where they really need you the most, if you can't be at the Capitol and the City Hall meetings, and if you can't sit at the table with people you despise. See, a lot of people say how much they hate the police. Abolish the police. We hate the police, right? The police are killing us. And we want them to go away. We hate them. We hate them. But you're not willing to sit at a table with them to tell them that. But you can protest, you can yell in their face, you can get on the bullhorn, you can yell at them all night, which is a form of communication. You are talking to them, but you can't do it in a constructive way where you can come and sit at the table and actually have these values lead us in the direction of change. If you're not willing to do any of that, then you're protesting is for nothing. If all you want to do is go out there and tear some shit up, then what's the real purpose in that? What do you do after that? So after you burn down the building, and I understand rage, I understand rioting, I understand looting, I understand it all. But what do we do next? What do we do next? What do we do? Because we're still dying. We're still being accosted. We're still being profiled. All these things are still happening. So what do we do next? That's activism. Activism is you got to be in it for the long haul. You can't just show up to a protest and check off that box of your list as though you've done something. What is beyond that? So what are you willing to do beyond that is the question.
So let's look at some things. Yeah, you were going in and out for a minute, but it's okay. We're catching up to it. So here's my thing. Let's just take Sacramento because we kind of like the hotbed. It's kind of funny in a sense, but we're like a hotbed right now because of where we are. So, for instance, let's just look at police brutality because that's a big one. Or I was watching a film the other day from 1968, and it's set in Baltimore, and they were talking about police brutality. So it was just kind of like, okay, that's 1968. That's over 50 years ago. You know what I'm saying? So when if there's an issue and then everybody's in the street about police brutality, what do you think the next steps are?
The next steps are having those conversations as far as changing the laws, because nothing changes. If we don't change the policies and procedures within the police departments, nothing changes. Why do you think they keep getting away with what they're doing? Because in writing, they're legally allowed to do what they're doing to us. So do you even know what the pro bar is? I always ask these questions. Do you know what the pro bar is? The Police Officer Bill of Rights. Do you know what that is? Have you ever looked at it? Do you even know why and they're of a protected class?
Oh, wait a minute. She's frozen here. Okay. Layla, you are frozen. So let's see what happens here, family. This is definitely getting into a good conversation. I think she may be somewhere. Let's see. Hold on. Let me see if we can bring her back. We'll bring her back. If you're just joining us on Sunday Sip with Sisters, I am talking with my dear sister Leah, and we're talking about activism and being an activist and what is that, and it's been awesome because she is an awesome activist. Okay, I think she's trying to bring herself back on, so that we'll give her a minute to get that together. And we're talking about that because we know. There we go. Are you back, sis? Okay, good. You kind of got frozen there, so it's okay.
It shut down the heat. It said it was too hot for my phone.
Oh,
it's hot
girl.
out here already. Yeah.
Yeah, Lord.
Okay. So I was saying that the police are of a protected class.
Okay.
So we have to change laws, policies, procedures, and we have to talk about reform. We have to talk about, is that even possible? What do we do to change these things? Because we can yell all we want. And I yell. I mean, I'm one that's out there and I'll do a protest, but there has to be some steps as to what we do next.
Right. So you said, okay, so with that, you said something about there has to change the laws, the policy and procedures, which is true. But then, because, we've always had policies and procedures all of this time. You do know that. Like, because I'm from Philadelphia, where the police department, that was like the only police department in the country where the federal government had to step in and take over the police department. It was so corrupt in the 70s. It was just ridiculous. But is there anything that you could do as an activist? Because what I don't see it with a lot of activists, not all, but I don't see them doing a plan of action like back in the day with the Panthers when they thought the police treated them a certain way. They policed their own. So that's a different form of activism, because now we're talking about serious accountability and self-governance.
Yes. And that's the problem. There's no accountability within our own communities at all. There's a lot wrong within our own communities that we're not checking. And that's a problem. So before we really go out and tell these other folks what they need to do to change to make our communities better. We got to be willing to make our communities better for ourselves, and that's not happening. It's not happening. Black women remain the most unprotected. We are not protected, and we're not defended. We're not. We're neglected. We're in every way possible. Black women are out here to fend for themselves. But we're on the front line of everything that happens when it comes to our communities. It's always Black women that are on the front line. Our children are not safe and they're not protected. Our elderly, not safe and not protected. We're in a national pandemic, and everyone's struggling to feed their families and struggling to educate their own children, as we were all thrusted into being teachers because of the pandemic. And there's no resources available to us. And if that wasn't a time for us to come together as a community, I don't know what other time it would have been, so we have to be able to take care of ourselves and do what we need for our community to be better before we expect anybody that's coming from the outside to really even care.
What kind of things do you think that's hard for us in Sacramento because Black people are not in a particular section? So usually when you say community, like right now, we could go to the Latino part of Sacramento and it would be all Latinos on full blocks. You can do the same thing with Asians. 7 out of 10 homes in California is owned by an Asian person, a person of Asian ancestry. I mean, they have whole neighborhoods. So when you say the Asian community, you really could walk in an Asian community. With Black folks, we're so spread out. I don't know how we keep saying as a community, but I don't feel like we really have a community.
And we don't. And I recognize that. That's something very specific to Sacramento. And I noticed that about Sacramento specifically, is that we don't have our own community. We don't. And we don't have that camaraderie with each other either. There's so much competition. There's so much bashing. There's so much cutthroat cliques. There's this huge competition with nonprofits. Like everybody, it's like they're handing out nonprofits like flyers. It's like, there's so much, and then everybody wants to, and then there's the oppression Olympics. My oppression is worse than yours. And then it comes to, and then we celebritize certain people that are not deserving of that. Because you lose a loved one does not make you a celebrity. It doesn't mean you're somebody that we have to submit ourselves to. We don't. You're a person just like we all are. All of us have been impacted by something. All of us have. So the death of your loved one is no bigger and better than the death of our loved one. It's just that some people process it differently and some people don't capitalize off that. So because I choose not to capitalize off my pain and make money off my pain, why does that make my pain any less than yours? It just means that we're two different people and we handle it two different ways. But it doesn't mean you're a celebrity. So there's a lot of behavior that's going on out here in this community that's being tolerated just because a person has lost a loved one. That's unacceptable. Because then what we're doing is we're compromising our standards. And we have no more convictions anymore. None. So we're telling the police, listen to the irony in this. We're telling the police and the government that we want accountability. But we're not telling our own fellow brothers and sisters to give us accountability. We're not holding them accountable for nothing that they do and say. So we have to really police our own. We have to be able to police our own within our own communities, within our own neighborhoods, within our own, if it's a clique, if it's a movement, whatever it is, we got to be able to do that with our own, and it has to be accepted. As long as it's not accepted, we're going to continue to have those problems, and there's going to continue to be division. And activism and division go hand in hand. They really do. Because everybody's trying to be the bigger and better activism, or activists, But there's no money in that. There's no longevity in that. There's no legacy in that at all. This is a thankless job. This is a job that you don't get accolades for.
Right on.
It's a job that you rarely get mentioned for, but you're out here, and that's calls in the middle of the night. Is leaving your family at home while you're with another family. It's sometimes pouring more into another family than you do your own. It's sometimes missing dinner because you're worried about getting dinner to another family that's in need. It's getting on a plane and going and flying and helping another family. It's all these things that people don't see, that are not in front of the TV screen. That's activism. Activism is doing what the community needs you to do, period. Without an agenda, without a camera in your face, without posting about it on social media and without any expecting anything in return. That's what activism should be. And that's me talking. That's my opinion. And
No,
like I
no, but
said, other people may think of it differently, but true activism should be from the heart.
right on, right on. We got joined by the Queen Mother Allegra. I'm so happy you could join us, sis. Sister Lay, you may able to put your phone in front of your ear just so it can cool down because my phone does that too because I have the iPhone and you don't want your phone to explode. That's why it's skipping like that. So you may want to just cool it down.
Yeah.
Allegra, what is your definition of activism or being an activist in your definition? And you're still muted.
So my definition of activism is doing the work for the people. It's about the people. It's the work we should be doing on behalf of the people. And that's what activism is about, in my opinion. Doing the work for the people without an agenda, just like Leah said. So Martin Luther King said, we can get a whole lot accomplished if nobody's worried about who's going to get the credit for it. That's kind of my belief. I believe that we should just be doing the work. We should not be trying to gain accolades or grow in popularity if we're really about just doing the work. My dad was a prison activist, and I asked my dad in a visit one time, I said, Daddy, why didn't you ever write your book? Why didn't you write your story? And he said, honey, it wasn't about me. When you're doing the work for the people and about the people, that's what activism is about. That's what you keep your focus on. You don't keep your focus on it's not about you if you're doing this on behalf of others. And that's why he never wrote his book.
Now, Allegra, this is for both of y'all. Do you think somehow that street culture or I'm saying street culture or underworld culture, whatever, has somehow impacted social and activism work? Like that culture, the way people move, has come into that field? Because I see a lot of street pimp stuff. I see a lot of hustler kind of mentalities with the word I was trying to think of coming in to activism, because I feel like sometimes it just feels a lot like pimpery.
Well, poverty pimping is real. And people who are looking to do things to pay their way, making it their job, and that's how they live on the income that they make for doing this work, sometimes that can kind of corrupt the work that you're doing, because then your focus becomes the money. And so when you're always focused on the money, it can distort the activism. It looks like it sounds like it, and it feels like it. So when we see poverty pimping, or what we can identify as Black women as poverty pimping in our own communities, we don't have to second guess what we see, because that is what we see. However, I do understand that doing this work does require money. So somehow I think that we need to make sure that we balance out getting the finances that we need and doing the work. At the same time, we can't let this stuff go to our head, because it's not us. It's not about us. So,
Right.
and a lot of times, yes, the way today is social media, getting your name out there, getting your business out there, finding out that you're the one that's doing this work. And that's important. That's very important. However, I would rather that it find me than I go looking for it. Find me doing the work. Find me out here doing the activism. I'm not looking for the camera. If you're going to find me, then find me. So, and that's intentional, because I don't ever want it to be about me. This is a gift. If you call to do this kind of work, it's a gift. Remember your calling, and remember that we do have to answer to a hierarchy, and that hierarchy is God Almighty himself. We all got to answer one day. So we might not want to be accountable to one another. We might not want to be accountable to community, which we should, but we will be accountable. And those who are operating in ways that are not right, that are that look like poverty pimping, that sound like poverty pimping, they'll have to answer. We have to do the work, and we have to make sure that if there is funding out there, and you know that another organization is doing the work, and you, an organization, have all of the wealth, distribute the wealth. Let us smaller organizations finish doing the same work that you all are doing with the financing. And so I find it interesting when people know that we're doing the work, they have the money, and they don't just offer up the money. They then become a competitor in any funding that you would even try to go after to do that work. Then next thing you know, the same people who already got the money is going to get the rest of the money. So I'm not quite sure how that all works, but I don't think it's conducive, because there's enough work out there for all of us, and we all need to be doing it, and we all need financing.
We'll talk. What I have seen in Sacramento, and I think this is definitely one of those conversations where when you kind of talk about some of the things you've seen. I've seen somebody feel some way about a major organization that basically this woman gathered a whole bunch of people and went and got funding and funded all the organizations that she collaborated with. Wow. Because she was so mad at the big fish. And she didn't do it loud. I mean, I met her in the process because she helped me to get funding for my work. You see what I'm saying? But yes, she was quietly moving. And so she has these meetings where she pulls in all of these organizations. You know what I mean? She pulls in all of these organizations and figure out what the expertise. Then she go after federal grants. And then she makes sure they all get money to fund their stuff. Yeah. This person is white and a female, and she was really mad at a black male who has a lot of power, who is a bit misogynistic, though they say they're not. And she was just, then she was a white woman on top of us. You know how white women be feeling when they feel like they're not being recognized. You know what I mean? So, but she came up, that plan to me that felt like something I've seen black people do. Like we figure out there's more than one way to skin a cat, as they say in the old school. You know what I mean?
That's how we got Black Wall Street.
Right. You see what I'm saying? So I feel
Black Wall Street.
Yeah. I feel like because somewhere along the line for some of us, we've lost the importance of knowing your history to get that blueprint so that you can be more effective. You know what I'm saying? Right. And I feel like now in the so-called activism community, that even sounds crazy when I say it. Because now it's like a whole set, these is the, there's black people, there's white people, there's other people, and then there's the activist community. Like it's like its own little onset. And then the crazy part about it is, it feel like you can't make no money if there is no tragedy or black death involved.
Right.
That is scary because I'm a black person. So I feel like, well, damn, I can't get no love until I'm dead. I don't even know that. Because a lot of the stuff I see in the activist community has something to do with death. You know what I mean? Like appreciating people after they're gone. Or you have to be super dysfunctional, like the person you talked about earlier because your brother died. You know what I mean? Now all of a sudden, but you still reaping havoc on our community. You know what I mean? Like you still are contributing to the culture.
Right.
But we're struggling like this. So I don't really know I'm not saying we all have the answer, but I feel like something. So on Sunday mornings, one of the reasons why I do this, I used to wake up every Sunday morning back in the 90s and watch Our Voices, because that was the only time I could really hear black people sit down and have different views of opinion. And I love Beth's voice, but it felt like somewhere in our community we have forgotten to sit down and have these conversations, whether we agree or disagree. You know what I mean? And there was always some kind of protocol. Like there's just some stuff we don't do to each other.
Right.
You know what I mean? And somewhere along the line, I think some of us have lost it or maybe never had access to it. You know what I mean? Like you may not even know that that's a rule. Hey, Sister Jamila.
Good morning, sisters. Good morning. So I've been sitting here listening, and to kind of piggyback off what you just said, Leah, and you were talking earlier, right? And There's a difference between community and hood. I grew up, I was born and raised in Oakland, West Oakland. My parents were both members of the Black Panther Party. They were in the Nation of Islam. So I knew what community was. We took care of one another. If your neighbor needed something, you provided it. People didn't have to ask. You didn't hold things over people's head. I remember if your electricity was out, you just might see that long orange extension cord for coming from Mr. Jenkins' garage through your mama's kitchen window, because he gonna tell you, hey, look, I can't run your whole house, but you keep that refrigerator plugged up and you plug that oven in when you need to feed them babies in that night at light until the community can come together and help you get your lights back on. We don't have a sense of community anymore. We don't have, you all were talking about accountability and responsibility. We are not accountable to one another, nor are we responsible to and or for one another and our actions and our behaviors. And it's very disheartening, and as we continue to watch the generations that come up underneath us, they have absolutely no sense of it. And a lot of that is our responsibility to be able to teach it to them. But how do we teach them something that so many of us, it has evaded us? You know what I'm saying? Like, I think we stand in a very unique position in time in history, right? Because we have parents who are elders. For example, when my father died, he was 84. My mother is 78. I'm 45. My youngest child is 5. My oldest child is 29. So I stand in the gap between the elders and the youth. I have been blessed and fortunate enough to be able to inherit that wisdom from my mother and my father and my grandmother and Auntie Allegra and all the other elders who that bless our souls, right? But the youth today can't hear us, because those of us who are in this age range, who do stand in the gap, we're struggling. We've been caught up in mass incarceration. We're dealing with substance abuse issues. We're working overtime. I remember as a youth, you get in trouble during the summer, you going to Alabama, you going to Mississippi, you going back home, keep your butt out of trouble.
Yes.
You going somewhere with some family. We had a sense of family and community that extended beyond the block that we lived on. We weren't afraid. I was afraid. Don't go walking down the street, popping off at the mouth, cussing, being fast, hell, none of that. Because guess what? On the way to the house from the bus stop, Miss Jenkins might say
Yes.
something. Mr. Henry got something to say to you. Oh, Miss Robinson came out the house. Oh, Miss Robinson come out the house and a moo-moo on the phone. I'm talking to you. Your big mama waiting for you right now. Get your ass home.
Yeah.
And you was terrified because when you got home, big mama was on the phone, sweeping the porch with that long ass cord that went all the way back to the house because we didn't have cordless. You remember the 1,000-foot cord that went all the way? Hold on, I'm gonna take you out to your Clinton yard. Ray working on the car. You know what I'm saying? But no call waiting. When things were a little bit simpler, when we had to tap into one another, when we had to be interdependent upon one another. And you see, we live in a country, a corporation that has socially constructed things to be a certain way for certain demographics of people. The word says, my people perish for a lack of knowledge. We are dying because we don't know. But those of us who have the knowledge, we're not sharing it with one another in healthy and constructive ways. If we are, we're taking and stealing one another's ideas, or we're trying to push the next person down. We're not building. We're clicking up, and it's only a select few. And we hold on to idiotic ideologies. The game is to be sold, not to be told. Says who? It is to be told. It is to be shared. It is to be disseminated, so that we can continue to grow. But that's not what we do. We live in a society that is about capitalization at any cost. And human lives don't matter unless you can profit from them. That's why we give people all types of hell in life, and then we want them to rest in peace, because we profit.
Um,
So I'm gonna stop. But good morning, ladies. It's good to
good
be
morning.
here.
No, I think you right on it. I think you're right on it. I also been listening to a lot of stuff on Clubhouse. Now I don't know if any of y'all on Clubhouse. Any of y'all on Clubhouse?
Mm-mm.
So I listen to Clubhouse just to hear conversations because I like talk radio and stuff like that. But, and then over the last couple of weeks, it's been like a lot of conversation around uh, uh, African Americans or ADOS and us against other communities. And I thought to myself, damn, we don't even have time to even do no shit like that. Like we got like real problems. Like I don't care about other people coming over here. I mean, why do I care about that? You know what I'm saying? And I feel like, and then some of those same people are activists. Because when you ask them their background or you listen, well, I do this and it's like you doing a lot of acting, but I don't see no institutions building. And again, for me, and you said something really great, Jamila. You said that we are in that in between time. Some of us, because I'm 49, so me, my reference is the people that I was under growing up who built institutions, who came out of those 60s and stuff and was like, we're going to build a clinic, we're going to build a school. I know people who actually did that because I was right there as a young 20 and 30-year-old
Mhm.
helping them do it. So for me, activism means you must build some kind of structure to lead when you're either too old to do anything or just need rest, or you become an ancestor. So I don't know what we leaving besides a whole bunch of talking.
We'll see that. So that too. Thank you for bringing me back to that because that is the answer, right? So a lot of folks don't like me. A lot of folks love me. There's
Join
no
the
in,
club, yeah.
you know what I'm saying? There's no in between. But those who don't like me because I genuinely believe that we must build infrastructural change. No way in hell we can talk about systemic issues and not build things to change the ramifications of those systemic issues.
Right.
And see, coming up, like, that's what I knew. My grandmother and grandfather came here from Texas in the early 30s. They bought a whole block in West Oakland. I watched my grandmother. She purposely rented to the mom on Section 8 who couldn't get nowhere else and gave her quality, affordable housing and didn't treat her like a slumlord. She took the man on the streets who, would come into her shop. I'll never forget, his name was Frank Hightower. He used to come in and he was all high and skinny and, mama, can I get a few dollars, mama? And can I, let me do this, mama? And he was, stuttering and all of these things. And as a kid, I looked at him and thought something was strange. And I remember one day, I kind of giggled at him. And she pulled me to the side and she said, first of all, you be careful. She said, you be careful how you entertain people
Right.
because you may be in the presence of one of God's angels
That's
and it
right.
may be a test. Be careful how you treat people. Be careful who you put your mouth on because you don't know that God very well may have sent them to you to test you and to be a blessing for you. But she told me, she said, the man that you're looking at right now, that's Frank Hightower. Frank Hightower was one of the biggest pimps, one of the biggest heroin dealers in Oakland. She said, and something happened to Frank. Frank went and sat down in prison for some years, and when he came out, he was not the same man. And all those people who flocked to Frank, who he fed, who he clothed, though he was destroying the community, he did what he did. Said all those people left Frank. All those people forgot about Frank. She said, but I didn't. And Frank never forgot me. See, because at night when I had to leave my shop, Frank made sure men came every night and escorted me to my car. He made sure that my shop got closed up. He made sure that men came over and cut the yards of my properties and all these things. So I'm paying back. Paying it back, And so it was through that I learned to ever look at your own people and throw them away. And that's what we do. And we have adopted so much of our colonizers' behavior towards one another.
That's
We
real.
don't, I'm sorry, I keep getting calls. That we don't
I
even
know.
recognize.
My house ringing, but you fine. That's why you see me
Yeah,
looking like this. You're fine.
it's like 1-800. Hello, 1-800 Jamelia. No, I'm not available.
Yes.
But it's like we do things that are harmful to one another. And a lot of us don't know. A lot of us don't know where it comes from. We don't understand generational trauma. We don't understand that this stuff is in our DNA. We don't understand what socially constructed things look like that have been applied specifically to demographics of people like us, and how it today, you know.
Okay, she jumped off. Sorry about, I don't know what's going on, but something's happening. She'll jump back on. I know she was fixing that. She made a lot of really, really good points. A lot of really good points. Okay, maybe my thing she is right now.
Yeah, I'm
Sis?
sorry. So I'm having internet issues. So if it kicks me out again, I'll be back. But you know, it's like we're not doing the things that are necessary to build ourselves up. We're not purchasing. There's a reason our communities are being gentrified. We're not going in, we're not buying up the stores. I just saw a property in West Oakland for sale, $890,000. It has 3 units and a store. Dilapidated looking, the whole shebang. I promise you, no disrespect to anyone, but some Asians are gonna go buy it. Some Hispanics are gonna go buy it. They're gonna put their whole families in there. And see, we gonna run around here and talk about, look at them over there, they 30 deep. Ah, ha, ha. Yeah, okay, well, they're 30 deep in that 2-bedroom. And all of the women are coming together. I saw it when I was going to school in Chico. I was living across the hall from a Hispanic family. There were like 16 of them in a 2-bedroom apartment. And I watched the men get up every single day, 5 or 6 of them, in the parking lot, in their truck. And the women had all of their lunches packed up, and they had their water and all of this stuff. And the men went to work, and the women, and I watched them wash the clothes and take care of the children and teach them how to read and take them outside. And they fellowshipped with one another, and they made sure dinner was prepared. And the men came home, and then on the weekends, I watched the men go out there and clean the yards and take care of the vehicles and all of this stuff, because they have a sense of community, because they have a sense of family. There's a reason why you can go and there's a Chinatown in every city, major city in this country. There's a reason that you can go into communities and you know that you are in a community.
Yeah.
There's community. We have hood. We don't own the stores in our community.
I agree. But I also, and I agree with everything you're saying, but I also think it's hard to compare Black people to any other group. And, yes. and the elder taught me not to do it, because it's very dangerous. Like when we say that they're very much into family, all the Black people I know are definitely into family. Because I didn't grow up with that. Even though we was poor, my mother had very high standards for us, because poverty is only in your mind. That's what my mom taught me. You understand what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. So what I come to learn as I get older and traveling the world is that you really are your circumference. Like you really, water seeks his own level. I can't explain it, but it's kind of like when I travel, and I didn't travel as a part of the military. This was like how I've seen the world. This is how I work. I found myself with people who were the go-getters. You know what I mean? Even in the crack era, you know, I know a lot of people who they're not here anymore because they was taking care of everybody in the crack era, and then their bodies gave out and then they died very young. Like 52 is young to die. You know, you ain't even lived your life yet at 52. I mean, you just discovering what you like if you're lucky, you know what I mean? So I just feel like when you look at all of these other groups, none of these other groups had the system in place that came against them so hard. Like even when they came here, they came as a unit. They came with their culture intact. They came with their languages intact. For Black people,
and they were given opportunities through the government system that we are not.
Most definitely. But I think the other piece to that is, this is what makes Black people so unique. Like I realize, I think sometimes if you have a pocket of people who are not doing as well, and it's like when you have apples and one of them is bad, you have to throw that bad apple out, or it will spoil all the other apples. This is the best way I can put it. I'm not trying to be funny. And so it's kind of like Black people had all of that. They had all of that right out of slavery. But in the year 1919, in a particular summer, even though they started in January, but it really exploded in the summer, they attempted to erase every Black town that they could find because they wanted those people's property. In some places, people had struck oil. Like we don't even know any of that history. So we sometimes be like, But what happened to Black people? We, even those who are educated or not, some of us don't even know that history because we don't study each other that deep. And the reason why I keep saying, why is history important? Because you're doomed to repeat it, because the game plan that other people are running on us is because we haven't read the book, and we refuse almost to read the book unless we go to jail. Then we got all the time in the world to pick up a book. Not to say it like that. Like, you have to get set down to get the truth. You know what I mean? I don't want the truth. I mean, I'll read the book, but I just feel like when you look at the activism, people back in the day didn't do it because it was their job. They did it because it was like their obligation to their contribution to their community and to their people. I was always taught that you do things for generations you're never, ever going to see. It's like planting seeds. When I go, my garden is looking fabulous right now. I'm so excited about my garden. Oh my God. However, I remember there was nothing there when my nephew came and laid all of those seeds down for me, and it was just like watching it grow. It didn't grow the next day I came out and it was a beanstalk. No, like that takes time when you're planting seeds. And I think a lot of us have forgotten how to plant seeds because we're always wanting to feel something for ourselves in the moment. I feel like some of the differences, and I'm using words like some and a few, because I don't think all Black people are having the same experience. I'm just because I've seen some people who ain't never felt like they ever experienced racism. I'm like, okay, because that's their reality, right? But I feel like in this generation, somehow we have forgotten that we were supposed to sacrifice for the next generation we're never going to see. Somehow people got us to buy into it's all about me and I'm doing me. Somewhere along the line, we bought that. And then at the same time, as we get older, then we start to feel some kind of way because we felt like nobody didn't give us something. It was like, dude, I was so glad I grew up with it's really not about you. That is really about generations you're never, ever going to see. My mother was so clear with that message. And that used to get on my nerves a little bit because, when you're young, but as you get older, and as my aunt used to say, as you get closer to the soil once again, you have to figure out, you have to really come to grips to what planning did you do? What did you really do? Were you the person who stood up for people? Or did you just sit to the side and complain? Did you quietly just do what you're supposed to do? Or did you try to draw attention to yourself to say, hey, look what I'm doing? Like, who are you for real? And how would you want people to remember you? To me, my biggest example of an activist that I just love, besides my mama, is Harriet Tubman. Because Harriet could have just stayed in Canada and been chilling. Like, she could have been like, you know what, I'm done with this. But she knew that it don't work like that because your freedom without other people, it is not really freedom for real. So to me, she is my biggest ideal of an activist who just did what she had to do because it had to be done. She didn't even know that her name was going to be talked about 100, 200 years from now because of the work she did. Like, I've seen her work in Canada. Not only we know her for the Underground Railroad. Do you know that in Canada, she helped people to reprogram themselves out of slavery? Because, once you've been free, somebody has to teach you how to walk, how to talk. What is it like to be free? Like, you know what I mean? Like, not to be on the clock. It's kind of like, you know what I mean? Like,
we call that re-entry.
She had a boarding house. Yeah, she had a boarding house, y'all. Come on. Harriet Tubman did so many other things that we don't even know that part. I just knew the part about her taking people up out of slavery. But I didn't know once she got the freedom, there was still more obligations. So we don't talk about that part of the activism.
Well, if I can jump in, something that Leah said earlier about what do you do after the marching, after the protesting, right? And she talked about legislation. And then you made a very good point about, well, there's always been legislation, right? It has. This country's founding document, the wonderful Constitution of the United States of America, said that we were 3/5 of a human being. Right. So from the beginning of time in this corporation that we like to call a country, we have never been considered a human being. We have always been considered property. We have always been considered a tool or an asset for economic gain and enrichment. of
Right.
people who do not look like us. That is the reality of this country. And slavery was legalized. Didn't mean that it was morally right. Law enforcement officers in this country today are justifiably, legally shooting and killing armed and unarmed individuals in this country through legislation. California has Assembly Bill 955, authored by De Leon, and it is the police officer's Bill of Rights in the state of California. There is legislation that you, at the end of the day, here it is. You cannot legislate away hate.
That's
You
right.
cannot legislate away racism. You cannot legislate away that which is written on the tablet of man's heart. So
You
we can
cannot
have as much
legislate that which
legislation as
this
we want.
country's been built on. We don't want to
Yes.
talk about
Say
that.
it again.
They're trying to legislature away. We don't want to get to the root. This country was built on racism. It was built on that. So as we try to change these laws, and you have these people in offices that do not look like us or lived our experience, how can they change a legislature that's going to eventually take away some of their privileges? So they want to talk about changing legislature, but are you willing to give up that privilege?
Well, no, that's why they left England.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, it came over here and stole somebody else's stuff. When people
Okay.
they discovered something that somebody was already living in and living on. So I think that's a bigger conversation, because I hear a lot of people talk about, let's imagine. You ain't really
No.
imagining, because these people are not going to just give it up like that.
No.
I mean, it's just
No.
not. But I also believe you said something, Jamila, like what they consider us. And what I'm always reminded, maybe it's just me, I don't care how they consider me. I care about how I consider me. I care about how I see other Black people and how other Black people see me to a degree, because we're in this together. I feel like in slavery, our ancestors knew that. That's why they couldn't break them.
Well, see,
That's why they could not break them.
at the same time, no, sister, there were those of us
Almost definitely.
who did get broken,
Yeah.
who are a part. And so it's hard, right? And I get you. It's very sensitive when we're talking about us, because we're supposed to protect us. We're supposed to love. There's supposed to be an unspoken code of conduct that we operate with each other as melanated people. Why? Because it's in our DNA. Because you know better. Why? Because you Black. People don't understand that, right? Like, well, why is it that because you're Black? Yeah, I can't explain it to you. It's just something that's been given to us that we and other people see it, other people know it. That's why they try to mimic and duplicate us. But you cannot duplicate that which God has genetically just placed in us. We're a different type of blueprint. That's why everybody wants to take our stuff. They want our hair, they want our DNA, they want our skin, they want our babies, they want our intellectual property, they want all things Black, everything except for the social responsibility of being Black in the United States of America.
That's right. That's right.
That's real talk. That's real talk. I will say this though, even though it feel like we're all supposed to know it, every time I work with a young person, even older people, and they may not have grown up with something, but when they see me and other Black people, they do be expecting something.
That's true.
That's what I know to be true. Now, they're serious. And I work in juvenile hall. I mean, I go in there, I love my girls in juvenile hall. Like I have some hardcore girls that people like, oh, they hard. I'll be in there with them. Look here. Like, we got each other. I don't care what we've been through. I don't care. A lot of them got mama issues. A lot of them got daddy issues. I probably look like they mama. Look here. There's something, when you meet someone that's genuine. I have been in some places with some hardcore ass people at midnight trying to leave New York, going back to Newark or whatever. And been about some, but because I don't show up like, oh my God, I'm so afraid. Like, dude, I got you. Because through all of the hardest, whatever you've been through, you could tell when somebody got you.
That's because spirit recognizes spirit. You see, and like, I'm a firm believer in seasons, right? There's seasons for everything. And like with crops, we as a people are like a garden. I look at my people like a garden, and I must tenderly tend to them. Some of them are roses, and when I go to touch them, they may prick me and they may hurt me, but I have to remember that they are the rose and I am the gardener. And sometimes they might be out there in the sun and they need some water and they don't even know it. And when I come to sprinkle them, because they've been dry so long, they can't even receive it. And they might even be angry with me because I have water and they don't. But they not even seeing that I'm trying to share that which I have with them, because that is my duty, right? And so when we look at one another as gardens, there's weeds that pop up that must be removed. There's times that we're going to need to be sheltered from the direct rays of the sun, or we may need to be sheltered from the extremities of the cold, or we may need our soil turned over. But if we're not looking at each other as precious gems in a garden, that our lives are interdependent upon one another, and we don't feed and we don't remove, we're just going to continue on this path of death and destruction. And the powers that be want this. They know these things. But what we don't know too is that our conditions have been designed. Like you said, we can't be compared to other ethnicities. But on a humanistic level, we're all in the same boat, right? But something has happened very uniquely to us as melanated people in this country that people want to continue to ignore. Chattel slavery was something very different. We've been dehumanized for the purpose of being criminalized, for the purpose of America being able to justify treating us in inhumane ways. And society does it to us every day. The mere fact that we continue to see people who look like us being gunned down every single day in this country by law enforcement, and no one seems to think anything's wrong with it. Don't get me wrong when I say that, because the families who are impacted, a whole lot of people see something wrong with it, because we know it's wrong. But at the larger scale, legislators don't see anything wrong with it. You know what? Because we continue to pass legislation that put bandages on gunshot wounds.
I know. And
we don't want to get to the problem, to the core.
Right on. Right on. But at that same token, Jamila, and I agree with everything you're saying, but at the same token, to date, we've had over 806 Black women murdered in America by Black men, up 200 from last year this same time, and Black folks are crickets. And so I guess for me, and I'm just going to be very honest, because I agree with everything you said, but I think sometimes the difference for me is I really do come from a people who didn't have anything but were accountable at the end of the day.
That's right.
They never said to me, it's been a systematic plot. This is why I'm going to abandon you. Never. And they could have. I said, my mother could have been, if my mother had been a drug addict, what can I do? You know what I mean? She had every right to seek relief somehow. You see what I'm saying? But the fact that she did not, I can't act like those stories is her story. Because it ain't her story. And she would say, that's not you. You don't get to do that. You get to say, you know what? I recognize your story, but that ain't yours. I also think we got to be honest about traitors amongst us, because the only thing that pisses me off about being Black is that we can never talk about the traitors and cutting them off. I'm not here to save a traitor. White people in their whiteness, they get to call a traitor. Yes. And even get rid of them if they want to. And no one says, no, we have to save all the white people. Nobody does that in white land.
But if we do it, we're going against one another. We're tearing each other down.
That's not going against
That's how it's perceived. That's how it's perceived. That's how it's said.
I agree. But my thing is, that's why we can't move.
Right.
Because we're saving people who we probably should. Look here, when you're at war, you don't have time to be like, well, we got to reform. Dude, you made a decision to do some shit, and now you got to pay for it, because that's the law of the universe. Ain't me. You know what's coming up. But we spend so much time rescuing people who we should be like, you know, my homegirl Jay Vaughn is in here. I was with her in San Francisco, and we walked around those blocks in the downtown. I had never seen homelessness the way I seen it in San Francisco. Mm-hmm. I've never seen somebody put a gate up around a camp of people with tents and be like, we're going to let them live right there in the tent. In the downtown. I've never seen so many Black people homeless in my life on the street. So many Black people who were on drugs on the street. And then I seen the other so-called melanated people from Honduras basically selling heroin to all these people flat out in broad daylight. And then they had some black men working for the city. I don't know what you call the people, but they make sure you got a bathroom there and they street sweep. And I'm like, what kind of shit is this? If this doesn't look like some modern day plantation,
Yes.
that's like, I mean, how do we look at that and be like, well, we're all victims? That's not the people I come from. We got to do something. We
Well-
got to do, and I can't wait for them to do it because we know. See, my thing is when you know someone only sees you as a slave, you cannot ask them to free you. That means that you really have mental health issues for real, for real.
Really?
Harriet Tubman was not going to wait for her master to be like, well, she was like, we get the hell out of here. And I'm going to come back and take anybody who wants to go.
One of the things you said, Sister Ro, was about, you know, all the black women that are being killed that nobody talks about, right? And then as you went into it, I really, you know, we've touched on this a little bit in the previous conversation, and it really struck a chord. Because there is this thing in the black community, and I won't say all of the black community, because as you're talking, right, we see that there is definitely a dichotomy. There's this duality in the African American community, but there is that what goes on in this house stays in this house.
Lord have mercy.
Hold on now.
What goes on in this community stays in this community. You see, because the disappearance, the rape, the kill, the murder of black women, indigenous women, it's nothing new. You see us being raped and molested by uncles and stepfathers and fathers and cousins. It's nothing new. Being impregnated by monstrous men in our community is very real. And you know, I'll share just a tad of my personal experience. You know, as I shared with you that day, I was sexually abused by my stepfather from the age of 7 until I was 15. He was a respected minister in our community. He was the assistant pastor to our church. And I turned 16 in December, and in February, my first child was born that was conceived from this molestation. And it was hush hush.
Yeah.
I dealt with my mother dealing with the pain and the shame and the guilt of her stepfather molesting her, and how her mother treated it and how she dealt with it. And in our community, you're silent. You take these things to the Lord in prayer. You hush your mouth. Hush your mouth, child. That goes back to, you don't touch master. Don't say nothing about master. You see, slavery left something with us that has caused a damage to our psyche, to the point where we cannot look at each other with genuine love. That's why our communities are hurting. That's why we're killing one another, because it starts at home. And there's a lot of us that are walking around here that present well, that you would never know, because we're not out here profiting off of our pain, because we don't show up and tell you every single thing that I've been through in order for you to understand I understand you. And you turn around and you crucify me, and you persecute me, and you try to hurt and harm me, not knowing I show up genuinely because I feel your pain. My words may not articulate it at times, but I feel your pain. I feel the authenticity of what we as a people collectively are experiencing. And so when we have these conversations, there's so many moving variable pieces that we oftentimes make the mistake of not looking at the intersectionality of all of it. Yeah, some of it needs to be picked apart and isolated and dissected, right? But at the end of the day, it's one big piece. And all of us have a responsibility to take hold of a piece. The word says every day to what? Pick up your cross. And it's not easy. It's not an easy cross to bear. Being melanated in this country, being female in this country, we have everything against us. Everything. I got to fight against the black man from possibly hurting or harming me, or another black man that I love that looked like him, his own brother. I might have to worry about a black man going to prison. I might have to worry about a black man being gunned down. I might have to worry about a black man's educational opportunities. I might have to worry about a black man's ability to be able to eat and feed his family. And what about us? Not to say that there aren't, because there's so many black men. But the reality of it is, our men have been demasculated. They've been stripped from our homes, from our communities. The only place some of them feel a sense of power is in the streets with some guns in their hand and some dope in their hand. Because the world says that success is equated to what you drive, how much money you got in your bank account, where you live, what you wear. Success is not about I built my people. Success is not about I went back to West Oakland and I bought that building and I put my drug addicted people in it and we built a store and we didn't exploit our people. We don't talk about that. We don't do that. But when we come into spaces and we may be different and we're not a part of the echo chambers of bullshit and our voices are too strong, our presence are too powerful, they don't want you there. Don't talk about healing the hood. If you're not in the hood, healing the folks, touching the folks. And this is not a call out on any specific anybody if I use any terminology. Don't take it personal.
I get that.
But it's personal. When we pick and choose who we gonna care for. You mean to tell me a 3-year-old child could be shot in the head in South Sac and the community won't come together because folks want to say it's gang related? Because you might feel some type of way about the parents or the situation? None of that matters. It was a child. Her Black Lives Mattered, but it wasn't a police involved shooting, so Black Lives Matter don't show up. Or the community don't want to get involved because, well, we hear this gang related, well, we hear this, that, the other. When 2 or 3 women show up in the middle of the night, combing the streets, looking for families, with our children in the car, one of us homeless, living out bags in her car, in and out of extended stay America hotels, while she's standing up, fighting for other people, saying, hey, don't attack this boy. His mental health is at stake. He is an example of what we all are experiencing from this trauma. Leave him alone. And I don't know him from Adam. And the world wants to come and say something, and the community want to jump on in. I never said I was anybody's anybody but a child of God. I don't call myself an activist because act means there's action involved. I just do. I'm a doer. I do for my people what I would want done for me because I know what it's like to be alone, to be hurting, to be without resources, to have the world against you, and to try to figure it out. And as long as I live, not a soul I encounter will have to experience that as long as they know me. See, the world sees the outside, but God looks at your heart. And I'm asking folks to start looking at folks' heart, including your own. Sometimes we must go within to do the work. The ugliness, the nastiness, the hatefulness that we see around us that we're so tired of, sometimes we don't even realize we're manifesting it ourselves.
Real talk.
The law of attraction is real. You will bring into your life that which you sow seeds for. Be careful what you sow, because the harvest is real. Sow seeds of love, not discord. We're out here trying to really bridge the gap, but we're being hurt by our own people. And it's time for us to stop. We can't keep talking about how we're going to come together and what we're going to do for our city and our community, and we're not even willing to address the issues, has harmed you. Because I was angry, because I was jealous, because I was envious, because I never took the time to sit down and have a conversation with you and find out anything about you on my own, because I listened to somebody who don't even know you. Those are the things that we do to each other. But then we show up in spaces and we think, hey, sis, how you doing? How you? Hey,
So true.
Check, no self-examination, no trying to feel how it is that you might have offended another person. It starts with self-examination. We got to look at each other. We get to the point to where we don't trust each other. That's real. We need to identify with what is that. And when we harm each other, we are accountable to each other. I did something and harmed my sister Leah here on the phone. I'm accountable to her for that. We got to own our stuff when we know we screwed up, especially within our own community. Because if we don't own it, we just as fake as the rest of the people that we might want to say words about. You understand? So activism, it's not only working on behalf of the people, for the people, but we also get to know the people. And us as activists, when we come together and we have our own different visions, we have to develop a sense of trust. If there is no trust, then we will not be working together. If you know that you trust somebody and you get caught up for any reason and you offend your sister, you offend your brother, it's your responsibility to own that shit and then go back to them and beg a pardon, because that's what you need to do. That's what we need to do. As Black women, that's exactly what we need to do. We got enough going against us right now. I don't even know what gets us to the point. I do know there's a spirit of division within the Black community, always have been and always probably will be. They divided us as slaves. Use the house nigga and use the field nigga. You got the light-skinned Blacks that's half mulatto because the masters raped the Black woman. And then you got these light-skinned Black. I might fall into that category. I don't know. But listen here. We all Black women. We all Black women. And it doesn't matter what it is. Either we're going to respect each other as Black women because we know the world is against us. And no one hated more than the Black woman. No one's treated worse than the Black woman. So as Black women, we need to be accountable to each other. If we miss it, we miss it. Own it. And the other thing that we have to do, we have to be deliberate in walking in forgiveness with each other and allowing grace with each other, because we're going to miss it. I missed it. We're going to miss it. We're going to get caught up. And if we're accountable to each other, we should be able to say to each other where it is that we've gone wrong and own it. And own it. It's not a comfortable place, but if we really walk around here talking about I'm keeping it 100, really? Are you really keeping it 100? Because keeping it 100 means owning your shit. And when you mess up, you own it. And sometimes you might not see it right in that moment. I've had people in my own organization check me about some things about me, and I didn't see it in that moment. I had to go back, rewind, play, see what it was they were saying, and see if in true retrospect, can I look in the mirror and say, okay, well, they might really got something there. And then I got to go back. In that same self-examination, if it's something that I mindfully said and or did, if I was very cognitive of what I was doing and or saying, and I meant what I said and what I did, then I'm gonna own that too. And there's been times where I've had to go back and say, listen, I hear you, what you're saying, but that was deliberate. I was mindful in what I was saying. I knew who I was speaking to, and I meant what I said. And so we got to own our good and we got to own our bad. And so could I have did something differently? No, I chose to mindfully do it the way that I did because it needed to be done that way. And we need to be that matter of fact with each other. Cutthroatness, look, envy, jealousy, that's just BS. And we need to, as Black women, we need not go there. We got enough people coming against us with that. We don't need to do that with each other. We don't. Try to walk in love with one another. This is a cold-blooded world out here, this nonprofit activist world, activism advocate world. out here in the city of Sacramento. I've never seen anything like it
The
before in my life.
nonprofit. What they call
Never
it? The
seen anything like it.
nonprofit. What they
Yeah.
call the nonprofit industrial complex or something like. I heard somebody reference that like it was jail. It was so awesome. I was like, that's exactly what it is.
That's
We got
deep.
some corporate gangsters that then came into the nonprofit game, and they, it's crazy. Queen
Sister
Malika,
Rose.
you said so many awesome things, huh?
Sister, I'm sorry, Auntie. You always sparking thoughts for me. But I want to go back real quick on the accountability, right? Because I was talking about the power, the positions that we find for Black men in our communities, right? And this ties into something somebody just sent in the chat about sexual abusers and needing to be held accountable, right? So I said that I said that there are two positions that I have seen Black men in our communities occupy that they feel a sense of power. That's in the streets, either thugging, bugging, whatever. No, there's three places: entrepreneurialism, but they usually don't fall. The entrepreneurs usually don't fall in these two categories, and within the church. Okay. A lot of times we talk about the sexual abuse and misconduct that occurs in the Catholic Church, but nobody wants to talk about what happens in the Black church, and that Black ministers, and I'm not attacking anyone, but this is my own personal experience because I grew up with one and I watched him sit at the table and plan the sermons and get up and preach the house down and come home and beat his wife and molest his stepdaughter. Okay. So this is my own personal experience, but I've seen it. And what happens is nobody wants to touch them, right? Because Black ministers or preachers are in a completely different arena. They can talk to politicians. The community works with them. They are a trusted source and resource. They feed the homeless. They provide for the community. They provide guidance counseling, marriage counseling, right? This is our churches. These are our ministers. These are our religious leaders in the community. This is the Black man that we look up to. Dr. King was a minister. Now, don't misconstrue this. I'm not throwing him in the category of sexual abusers. I'm just using the comparison of him being a minister and the power, right? Because he is one of the most powerful Black ministers that we know in history, okay? And he sat with presidents, and he sat with people in prisons. He sat with everyone in between. So there's power, we know, in the Black church. That power that we see also translates over into other Black leadership. And something that I have seen here in Sacramento that is very disturbing to me is that we know that we have Black men in positions of power and leadership, whether it's dealing with community involvement or youth or anything else, that have a known record and history. These are not just people talking behind closed doors. These are not false allegations. These are things that have been legitimately documented, that they have a history of sexual improprieties and abusive behavior towards women in our communities. And yet and still, they are still allowed to sit in these positions. They are still allowed to go out into the community and speak on behalf of the community. They are still allowed to degrade and disrespect us as Black women, and no one says anything. But the minute we fart or burp the wrong way, oh, did you see a fart? Did you hear a burp? Did you? And it makes absolutely no sense. And so, these are some of the things that we have to look at too. Like, who are we following? Who are these leaders? What's in their closet? What's really going on with some of these folks? Why do you people continue to do certain things like pick up the phone and call and say, oh man, I feel you. I understand what you say. Oh man, I've been saying that for years. No, you haven't. If you have, it's been behind closed doors because you're not willing to stand up and say it publicly and say that this is wrong, this is a problem, this is a cancer that needs to be cut out. Instead, we allow it to continue to spread and infest, and what started off as a small nodule that should have been removed is now bone cancer. We are now terminal. Our people are dying, and there is no coming back from it. And you sitting around with these same cancerous folks expecting things to be different, wondering why the youth are not listening, wondering why we are falling apart at the seams, because we are not living in accord. There is no code of conduct as to how we operate. We just out here doing anything. There's no consequences for the behavior. People are actually being rewarded for the behavior. That doesn't make any sense to me at all. I'm gonna shut up. Get me on one. Get me mad. Where'd Ro go?
I don't know. Looks like she lost her connection.
Did we lose our host?
You cut your hair?
Hmm.
I said you looking good, Red. You cut your hair?
Me?
Mm-hmm.
No, it's just behind me.
Oh,
It's
just
hot.
hiding.
Yeah. Yeah.
Should the road come back before one of us say something crazy?
No.
We've lost our host.
Want to text her?
So, yeah.
Send her a message. She's probably trying to get back on.
I think I.
There
Hey,
she is.
man. Hey, sister. You're muted.
You're muted.
Thank you. I'm so sorry. I had to answer. This is an elder. I had to answer the door. So I'm so sorry.
That's
But
okay.
sis, you had said something. And I'm going to tell you, my favorite Sting lyric is poets, priests, and politicians. I'm going to add the third. I'm going to add the fourth pimp. Poets, priests, and politicians have words to thank for their position. We scream for their words of submission because nobody's jamming their transmission. And so for me, I don't care if you're a pimp in the street. I don't care if you're a minister. We as a people have this fantasy of men being close to God or having God almost like powers. Because nobody can do things without, we have to believe in some part of the process. I know this is a hard concept. When someone has shared this with me, first it was kind of hard. It's kind of like when people, we like to say, well, it was a circumstance, but you still have to go along with it. That's like being in America. This is a capitalist society. We are constantly participating in the shit. Let's be honest. So whether you do it willingly or kind of hesitatingly, you're still participating. I think they get to have power because we let them have power. Because we are so trying to always be closer to what we think God is. I was taught that the Bible, the Quran, the Torah, any so-called holy book could be used as a tool to your enslavement or a map to your liberation. The liberation part comes with you doing personal work. The enslavement comes when you let other people do your work for you.
That's right.
So I feel like the ministers in our community get to show up the way they do because we almost scream for them to do it. And nothing worse than somebody complaining about a problem. Let's give you an example. And then we say, okay, so let's get on it. And two people stand up with you, and it's 100 of y'all.
Yeah, like that.
Y'all agreeing with me all day long.
Like those advocacy calls to action. Everybody being called to action, and only a few you show up. Yeah, like that.
Yeah. You see what I'm saying? So, Jamila, when you talk about and I so feel you when you talk about black men in this God complex, we almost kind of in a society give black men the pass because just as we're talking about them being predators on us, we start talking about why they're predators. See, I don't know nobody who do that. When Jews talk about like Hitler's Nazis, they'll be like, and this is why they were Nazis. They be like, these motherfuckers Nazis. Like they don't try to act like what happened to Hitler. Was he abused as a kid? They don't care about. He was Jewish. Y'all know that his mama was Jewish. That made him Jewish. But anyway, he don't care about none of that. We in one breath will first if somebody's a predator in our community, I wouldn't give a damn what his background was. That for me. Because I feel like at some point you have to cut the cancer out. You can't negotiate with the cancer. You can't look, this person is hurting somebody. They need to be dealt with. But then we talk about, the same book that we get power from, we'll use those words to further enslave people. Well, only God can judge me. Look, somebody judging you down here. Don't get it twisted. Like we use those things.
I'm sorry, that's a part of, that goes back to an earlier portion of the conversation, right? About how we deal with one another in our own communities. And I think that we have the unique ability to justify and judge. Okay, because we will turn around and justify the behavior that we exercise in our communities because a part of us really have a deep understanding, right? So on one hand, it's like, well, black man, why you not showing up? We out here fighting for you. When you're getting killed, we fighting. When you go to prison, we fighting. Well, why aren't you showing up? Well, you aren't showing up because you're being killed and you're being incarcerated. And there's a system that's designed to keep you at a certain level. But then it's okay, but those who aren't impacted, how come you're not? And you know what I'm saying? So we can go back and forth as to finding reasons why, but I think at the core that goes to the fact that we look for reasons to try to understand and justify our behaviors, and we try to apply a soothing balm over it, that it's not just a human thing, right? Because like you said, the Jews do, everybody does this. This is a human thing, but we've been isolated as a people because this country has designed things that when you say certain things, it's automatically attributed that we are the worst of the worst, right?
Right.
It's black on black crime. So you ain't never hear white on white crime. You'll never hear Hispanic on Hispanic. But
it doesn't. But that doesn't matter because black on black crime exists. Let's just be honest. I don't care about the other groups. See, that's what it is for me. See, at one point we can't talk about we have a problem, and then when you go to talk about it, it's like, well, we have to understand it. That to me is a form of slavery that we pit each other through. When I say, like my homegirl just pit, some of us need to go back to the Creator. I believe in that. I believe that people need to go ahead on and become dirt again, and then maybe their spirit will come back and they'll be a better person. I don't know, but I feel like all of this having to understand that's a form of slavery. That don't make us special or unique. That means that you're a slave because nobody else is forced to consider other people's realities but black people. Like I don't want to do that, and when you do that, somehow people don't think that you're black enough. Because listen, I love black people, but I'm not connected to all the black people. See, I'll be honest in saying that. Allegra said something about intention. I intentionally said that for real. I don't do the fake we all in this together. I don't believe that. Some of us know that I'm not, I may look like black people, but I'm not black people. I may look like Big Mama, I'm not Big Mama. I have to tell people that all day long. You don't get to treat me some way because somehow you think we connected. Because I know my people came off of the plantation in Fairfax County, Virginia. See, I know that. But that don't mean you get to treat me some way because we have a bonding trauma experience. No. We're not going to make it. We're not going to make it. And that's why some people have to leave us. It don't mean they don't love us because they love themselves. And they people, you have to sometimes leave black people because it's a sickness that we can't get. It's like a trick box. We'll never get out the box. We'll never get out the box.
I wanted to back up on something that was said earlier as far as black men go. And I know me personally, I don't give black men a pass. I think I've been very intentional on calling them out exactly the way it is because I'm a firm believer in the black woman is the black man's responsibility. I firmly believe that. You know, when it comes to what black women can do for a black man, then they honor us and all of a sudden they show our worth. But outside of that, you know, because growing up for me, there was OGs. I don't know that OGs exist anymore, but there was OGs and there was a pecking order and there was a protocol and there were certain things you did not do. And now it's like everything goes. Everything goes. And there's no black men to check a fellow black man. So you're allowed to target a black woman, beat a black woman, stalk a black woman, attack a black woman, and no other black man will check you. And when the black woman speaks out and says that I don't like the way you made me feel, and you did something that put my life in danger, she's all on her own. She's on an island all by herself. And all the black men are silent. But when the black women are laying on their back and we pushing out the babies and we standing at that gate, you know, when you get out of prison and we're out here fighting for your life when the police are out here killing you and beating you, then we're upheld to a different standard. But when we're telling you about you, there's no accountability. There's no internal compass at all. And I'm very intentional about that, you know, and they don't like it. But, I want to just say this because, you know, yesterday we had a city address the city panel with a lot of black men. And And I find it interesting how when I look and see who's on this panel, I don't see these people out here doing a damn thing in the city at all. So I don't really know how much you can really address the city when you're not out here in the city doing a damn thing. It's very confusing for me to even for me to respect something like that. When what exactly are you doing? You don't respect Black women. You're not out here protecting children. You don't answer the call of action. You don't hold your fellow brothers accountable, but you can sit on a panel and have a state of the city address, but you don't want to address nothing. So what exactly are we doing then? If we're not going to address anything going on in the city, then why are we playing games and having a panel discussion about addressing the city when nothing's being addressed? I don't know if anybody had the pleasure of seeing any of that transpired last night, but you can't address the city when you ain't gonna be real about it. You're not gonna be real about stuff. And another point I wanna say also too is that we're human. We're human first and foremost. And a lot of people, you know, they put this covenant over us and they hold us to these pedestals as though we're like not human or something. The things that but what we see out here in the community that everybody doesn't realize, you know, we are the ones that have to stand by the dead bodies. We're the ones that sit with the young girls that have just been raped or kidnapped. We're the ones that go into the prison and see our brothers and our sisters on the slave plantation. We're the ones that have to deal with the medical malpractice of how our Black women are treated within the medical profession. You know, we're the ones that are dealing with all this. That's stuff that y'all out in the audience, y'all out there that do nothing but double tap all day, y'all don't see any of that. We are human and we don't always have the right response. We don't always handle things the right way. We make mistakes. We handle things the best way we know how, but we are dealt heavy cards because we're really on the front line. We're on the front line, and that never ever gets talked about. It never gets talked about. We just don't get the recognition that we deserve. And I can say that for all three of us sitting here, that we do not get the recognition we deserve. We bust our asses. We do everything we can by giving the last dollar out of our pocket. We get the shirt off our back. We house people. We feed people. We plan everything from a wedding to a funeral. We do all these things, and nobody ever hears about that, ever. And that's a problem.
Right.
So if we're talking about activism and we're talking about being out here and doing the work, we do the work, and we do the work regardless of social media, regardless of a paycheck. We still do the work because it's necessary. And that never ever gets talked about. So I'm disappointed. I'm disappointed with our Black men. I'm disappointed with the community as a whole, because, you know, just recently a major call of action went out, and it was a very difficult call of action. You know, it was a 10-day stretch of being out at the state fair. It wasn't a state fair, it was a carnival. And it was grueling on our bodies, emotionally, mentally. It was taxing on us. And it was not something that we enjoyed. It was difficult for us. We had to be away from our families and away from our businesses. Everything was put on the back burner because we answered the call of action so that we can keep our community safe, that we can protect our youth, and we can be that buffer between the youth and the police. And we were out there and we committed to that, and you don't hear about that. You don't hear about that.
But you know somebody got paid to do that. You just didn't get paid. You do know
That
that,
wasn't
right?
us.
Oh, we
didn't get paid.
We do.
That's my point. But that's the
we
part
do
of the
know that.
delivery. That's the pimp stuff I'm talking about. That's
Yeah,
the
we
pimp
know
stuff
that.
I'm talking about.
Impact, did you get paid? Because the village didn't get
Impact
paid.
did not get paid. But what we did do, Impact and the village both, what we did do is we paid out money. We had to then provide our own water, feed ourselves, gas money, everything that we had to do to go out there and answer a call. And we weren't even taking care of ourselves.
Hold on, who put the call out? See, here's the thing: who put the call out? The people? Because I didn't know the people had a call to put out. I didn't know that they had a way to pick the call. See, when I heard them saying, "Oh, there's going to be a mob ruling at the Arden Mall or at Delta Shores," and all, it's like, you must be crazy out your mind if you think white people and people with investment in capitalism are going to let you destroy their shit. You really tripping. But I know people got paid for that. I know people make side deals and contracts with people. That's why I'm sitting back like, you know what? I'm not doing this.
Get paid. No, we didn't
I
get
know
paid
you
for
didn't.
that
But
one either.
what I'm saying is that frenzy that get created because they know how some black people are. That we're very emotional. They be like, "Oh my God, like we can't control our own goddamn kids."
Yeah.
Like, are you serious?
Well,
I mean,
speaking
seriously.
of that, controlling our own damn kids. Let me just say this.
I work for
Black
them.
people, if you looking at this, get your kids. Y'all know that old saying, it's 10 o'clock. Do you know where your kids at? Well, we can contest that. A lot of black families didn't know, parents didn't know where their kids was at, or they should have came and got their kids. It's a disgrace when we as a people just let our kids wreak havoc. And so then they wonder why they sitting around talking about black kids and why they treat black kids the way that they do. Get your kids. It's time to clean up house. And every parent need to examine themselves and find out, what am I doing as a parent
That part.
that might be contributing to my kid acting the way that they're acting.
Because
Because
some of these
we as a
parents need
people,
to
we got
get
to do
got
something
too.
different. We got to do something different.
I agree.
At the end of the day, when we found ourselves out there hurrahing the kids to get out on the last day with police cars behind us and sirens going and the lights going, I got to the end there and I said, I need a belt. That's what I need. Because and not so much for the kids, but the parents need their behinds whooped because
Of
they got the
course.
kids out there just wreaking havoc. Get control of our children, black people. Get control of our children. And when we know that there's going to be a space where we know black children are going to be showing up, why are we as adults allowing these kids to just wreak havoc? There was a standard for us back in the day. Elders didn't sit by and just let kids do what they was. I'm not scared of these kids today. Stop being scared of your kids today. Stop being scared of your kids. Get control of your kids. Activists, advocates. If there's a call to action and you know it's going to be a bunch of black kids there, we're going to need everybody to show up. Everybody to show up. Why? Because that's community. That is community. And we might not be all in the same hoods no more. We might be spread all over this city, but we bring community to where our kids are. That's what we should do. That's what activism look like. And if one person is getting paid, then everybody needs to get paid. Share the wealth. However, being paid or unpaid should not determine whether you're going to show up for this generation that's just, Lord have mercy. We got to do more than just show up. We also got to pray and do everything else. We get the sage out and everything else. But we cannot just sit back and just allow what we've been allowing. Parents, black parents, we got to do better.
So Queen Mother, I agree. I also think that there's something also to us always showing up in an emergency. See, it's like we only see our kids when they do some bad shit. Or there's a call out like, oh, all our kids are going, like all black kids are bad. When the black kids used to use my center to do their once a month, they had it was youth college. It was youth from all over Sacramento. But because these youth wasn't in gangs and shit like that, we act like they don't exist. We talk about intersectionality, but we don't really believe that shit. Straight up. Because we act like something has to be wrong for you in order for me to see you.
Right.
Like, see, I know a lot of kids who ain't on nobody's radar, but they shouldn't have to act the fool for us to see them.
That's right.
I shouldn't just see you trying to control you at the goddamn mall. That's not how I should be in relationship with you.
That's true.
We should always be making place for our young people, but we don't do that because there's no money in that.
You know, going back to the old way, the very presence of Miss Brown sitting on the porch as I walked home, the very presence of black elders, the very presence of us can make a difference if our heart is right. Our very presence, in their presence, not to judge them, not to say anything, but to be there, just be in their presence. That makes a difference. And we don't know how many kids, black kids, don't have nobody. They don't have nobody. Maybe their parents are unable to do what is required to do as a parent. That's where community comes in. That's what we had. We had Big Mama and Little Mama. You know, that was my friend's mama, who I called Mama. You know, and that's the concept that I'm thinking. When When we're out there, when I'm out there, I'm not really there. I even got thinking about security. We're not secure. We're not security. It's almost like and we're not really chaperones. We're being a present. We're making a presence to let them know, I see you, baby. I'm here. I'm here. We here. Y'all need anything? Let me know. Now be good. Now, it's a reinforcing presence is what needs to be. And you're right. It needs to be a reinforcing presence sitting on the corner when the kids is going to school. It needs to be that, it's not like it was before where, we're all in the same community. You're going to see the same kids. That needs to be. So if you're a mom just at home and you're a home mom or a grandmother, sit out on the porch while the kids is walking to school. Say good morning to the children walking to school. Have a good day. Sit out, come out the house. Let's bring community back to community. That's activism. That's advocacy. That's a form. That's community work. And we got to do something different.
I also think it starts with us just speaking to each other. I mean, to me, I'm talking about the very, very basic, not because for me, I'm just tired of the antics of urgency. Like you can't make an existence in urgency. You'll die. Yeah, that's why our lifespan is so short. Because everything is like, we're always like this. Like we don't know what it's like to just live, to just exist. I try to walk every morning on Garcia Benz or ride my bike. Every time people, hi, good morning, hello. We can't even do that sometimes. We see young people, we be afraid. Like, hey, how you gonna speak to them? How you doing, young man? They know a woman, they'll speak back to you straight up because I've had that experience. But there is something in the very basic core fiber of a human beings acknowledging each other. And that's why I say, even in slavery, when they wouldn't allow us to speak our own language, we did a head nod. We had a way of saying, hey, I see you. How you doing? Somehow we've forgotten that.
Yes.
Because we're waiting for
the Black kids, how many others are gonna speak to our kids on the street? How many others are gonna acknowledge our babies? Shoot, get out the house and go outside. Go outside while they walking to school. Say good morning to them. And they're not used to that. So we need to bring that to them to let them know you do have a community. Black people do love these Black kids today.
Right. But that's the beauty of it, Queen Mother. The beauty of it is that we never cared about what other people thought.
Right.
When I was growing up, it's how do you treat each other? That's the way it went. Seriously. So you didn't care what white people didn't like you. I'm from the East Coast. I'm from where it's very segregated. You have the Italian section, the Portuguese section, the Puerto Rican section, the Black section. It didn't matter what they did. It's matter what you did in your own. If you walk down the block, everybody on the block, the three old ladies that sit on their porch every day, chewing tobacco snuff, they always spoke. You felt weird if you was like, where they at? They ain't out here because they used to be sitting out here. There is something about that need to acknowledge each other that has been lost. We really think you have to have a grant for somebody to pay you to do that.
No.
Well, you said something. One of you said something earlier about being raised by OGs, right? And I say this all the time. We were raised by OGs. This generation is being raised by IG. You see, corporate capitalism and exploitation of other human beings for economic gain doesn't stop with white folks doing it to us. That's a part of what has happened, is that we have lost a sense of community. We have lost a sense of camaraderie, that going out to the porch and sitting there, folks are afraid to sit on their porch today because a drive-by may occur, depending on the community you're talking about. And I'm assuming we're talking about some of our more impoverished and hurting communities, right? People are afraid to talk to the youth because they don't know how the youth are going to respond. The youth don't know how to properly engage. There is no bridge between the youth and the elders because a lot of these youth are seeing they have some of the very same problems with these things that we're looking at and we're talking about. They recognize that there's these groups that are out here, these organizations that are getting money, and here, let's go to Costco and buy, a couple of cases of Capri Suns and some water and put you in a custom t-shirt and throw a basketball around and call the media out and say, this is what we're doing for the youth and, this, that, the other, give us some more money. Or when certain people in the community are killed. And God forbid, it's a precious young a young child's life, but she's marketable for profit. So we're going to come together and we're going to heal good, but we're not going to be what that we talking.
Right
But
on.
but it's convenient to do that because it's marketable. And God forbid the people. So I want to be clear on something. So I, I'm not tripping on no money, and none of us are, right? I don't get a dime from anybody, anything here. Not the city, not Sierra Health Foundation, not nobody. But I've built my own organization. I've built my own C3. I've built my own C4 because I believe that there is work that needs to be done and needs to be done independent of some of this bullshit that goes on behind closed doors because we lock each other. We become beholden. When you receive money from certain entities, you become beholden to them. And you're not able to move with the authenticity and integrity that you may otherwise because you're beholden to them. And y'all can have y'all little money. I'm not even tripping off of it because I serve a big, bold, mighty God, you see, and he will always make sure that I have the resources that I need to be able to provide for his people. If he could feed his people with 2 fish and a loaf of bread, let me tell you something, y'all, because what's done in the dark always comes to the light. All money ain't good money. And you got to be careful who you associate yourself with because sometimes that dime look good until it comes out where it came from.
I've seen that before.
You know what I'm saying? We're doing heart work. Things that we do, we're not looking for, and for anybody watching, I want to be clear on this with what my sister Leah said. We're not looking for nobody money. We're not looking for anybody's recognition. It's just really disheartening when there's some folks who know us, who know us, who know what we've done, who know that we're there and that we're not out here posting pictures on social media about it. We're not talking to folks about it. We're not out here trying to profit off of it. We're doing it because it's the right thing to do. And y'all same folks have allowed us to be there, have helped you, and y'all done turned around and tried to tear us down. You done went behind closed doors and you done talked so much garbage about us. You done planted seeds of lies. You have intentionally defamed our character. You have intentionally tried to create harm for us. But let me tell you something. The God I
Let's not
serve
forget
says,
about
touch
co-op.
not my anointed and do my prophet no harm. I'm not calling myself no prophet, but I am highly favored and blessed and anointed. That's why I walk like I walk and I do what I do. So ain't no weapon formed against me go ever prosper. So good luck. Keep at it. Doesn't say they won't be formed, but it says that they will not prosper because I know where my heart lies. And so, for those folks who are doing it, and this is not to dismiss those people who are in the space, who run legitimate not-for-profits, who are genuinely doing the work, who are really touching the people. We're not talking about you. So don't take it personal. Just like when people be talking about activists and actors and all that, I don't take it personal because I know you're not talking about me. Even though I know the mouth that it might be coming from, you saying it because you're hurling an arrow at me. It ain't what they call you, baby. It's what you answer to. So you can call me what you want, but I'm not worried about it, And so we just continue to do the work, right? And God will always provide the resources. But my message for some of these folks out here today is be careful what you do. Be careful what you do because people are watching. There are youth that are watching. I'm going to give you a story real quick. I'm going to go on and put them on blast real quick. There was the year before last, we were having these meetings called the gatherings through BayPAC. And we had come into this space and we were having a discussion about some of the things that the different organizations were doing in the community. This one organization in Del Paso Heights on the corner, there's a person in there that's sitting and talking. And she's talking about this program that they have and how they offer it to the community and the youth. And they're working with all these kids. And unbeknownst to them, sitting right next to them is my daughter. At the time, she's 12 years old. She's sitting right next to this woman. And just the day before we sitting in this room having this conversation, my daughter and about 10 of her classmates from the private school that they're going to walked up to this center where the school had an arrangement with this center that they were going to go and use their computer lab. And this same woman stood there and said all these wonderful things about this program, not knowing my daughter standing right there going, Mom, that's the lady I was telling you about. That's the lady who was saying some of those things to us, who was questioning us, who made us feel uncomfortable, and who then told us that the program had been closed. They walked in the rain all the way to the Urban League building, where there was a computer program that they didn't even have the decency to call the school to tell them, hey, we've canceled the program for the day. The gentleman that was running it is no longer here with us. But instead, you sit in this room and you tell everybody all these wonderful things, and you don't even know that there's a child who's sitting here right next to you. So now I have to go home with this child who's looking at me confused, trying to understand why this person who is highly respected in the community that she sees on billboards and all these other things, she don't know who she is. She don't know the power that she holds. She doesn't know what she does in the community. All she knows is she encountered this woman, and this woman said one thing on this day, and then the next day she's sitting in a room with the woman who don't even recognize the child, and she's saying something else, and now this child is looking confused going, but mommy. And those are the things that are happening. So don't think these kids don't know what's going on. Don't think these kids not looking at us going, wait a minute. They feeling pimped. They feeling pimped by the foster care system. They feeling pimped for that SSI check the parent or guardian might be getting for them. They feeling pimped for their EBT cards. They feeling pimped for the not-for-profit grant money that they getting, but out here to be the voice of the youth, but they silencing the voices. You know what I'm saying? Like, it doesn't make any sense. So if we're really going to talk about addressing the city, if we're really going to talk about addressing the people, if we're going to talk about addressing the issues, cut the bullshit, people. Get to the real stuff. Get to the surgery. Stop putting Band-Aids on gunshot wounds expecting that you ain't going to end up with an infection.
Right on. Y'all, we're going to wrap up because later I know you're on your way for some rest, hopefully. Could you give us some final words before we sign out? Everybody, get your final thoughts together. Leah? She may be frozen. I know she's driving in. What about you, Queen Mother Allegra? Any final words? Oh, wait, babe, are you muted? No, we just can't hear you. I see your lips moving.
She giving us the business too.
She is.
We can't hear you, Leah. We can't hear you.
We can't hear you. I'll do sign language. You know, you be like, you looking fly though. You looking real fly with your glasses and everything on. We just can't hear what you say. I think she can hear us, but we can't hear you. Yeah, we can't hear you. Oh, you saying some stuff. I can tell you saying some stuff. Like I already can tell.
If Facebook ain't putting you in jail, you being muted because I know you giving it to us.
Yeah, because I'm looking at it. I can't. We can't hear you. So hold on, sis. What about you, Queen Mother Allegra? Any final thoughts?
I just wanna, because I do have a black man that's a husband that is active and very supportive of us black women.
That's right.
Give a shout out to the black men that do stand for with black
women.
Right. This is not a black man hate bash thing here.
That's right.
So I want to acknowledge you, and I want to say thank you for those of you who have stood with us, behind us, alongside of us, and for us. We want to say thank you.
That's right.
Queen Mother. What about you, Sister Jamila?
Lay you back? No, you're not. Your lips is moving, but we still can't.
Yeah, we just can't hear you. You got put on mute. Like I don't know what happened because I'm looking down here. I really can't.
Hey, that's the unfortunate part, right? Like they always trying to censor my sister. Poor baby.
No, that's all right though.
Oh, she back. I hear her voice.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
I think we can hear her now.
Yes.
Boy, I'm telling you, if I ain't in Facebook jail, I'm in Instagram jail, I'm in somebody jail.
Just don't go to the county jail.
Yeah. As long as I stay
Hello?
away from there,
Right.
I guess I'm okay. All right. Yeah, I just want to close up by saying I know a lot of the things that we say makes it seem like we're targeting someone, and then sometimes we are, but in most cases, it's really just this is part of the dialogue that's necessary that we need to have. These are the conversations that we need to put forth in order to really make the overall change of what we're really talking about here. And this is a difficult conversation that a lot of people don't want to have because they take up to it. They want to get offended first instead of listening to the words that we're actually saying and then putting some type of implementation by it so that we can make those changes. So I know that, our delivery a lot of times comes off harsh. We're very passionate people, very much so. And we mean what we say. We're very unapologetically in that way. We mean exactly what we say. And I think that these conversations, so I really appreciate you, Mama Ro, because these conversations are very necessary to have. They're not comfortable for any of us to have. We've made mistakes and we've done things that we have to self-reflect on down the road to say, oh, we didn't need to have to say it that way. We didn't have to come across that way. Maybe that event should have went this way. We do those self-reflections all the time. And it takes each other. I know the three of us are very good at being able to check one another in a loving way. And we have always been very good at accepting it from each other. And it hurts sometimes. And sometimes we got to get off the phone and take a breath and get back to you later, because sometimes, we're very strong women with very strong deliveries, and we're very passionate about what we do. That is one thing that we all have in common. But I wish that overall, I wish people would understand that we come from a place of humanity. We are humans. We see something that needs to be done and we do it. There's really not a roundtable discussion that takes place with that. If we get a call in the middle of the night, middle of the day about a family that's in need, we contact one another and we show up. And it's just very instinctive that way. So I wish people would understand that, a lot of times they hear about grant money and all the politics behind it. We're not caught up in that. We're not a part of those conversations. And that's not what we need in order to move. So we do what we do out of our heart because we know it needs to be done.
Right on. Sister Jamila?
Just to kind of piggyback off what Leah says, I think that's the most important, right? Is that we show up with authenticity because of the love of our heart. And I just ask people, check your own moral temperature. That's it. Check your own moral temperature. Why do you do what you do? And if it's not coming from a place of genuine love, care, concern, and wanting to uplift the next human being, rethink it. Because you only get one lifetime. This is not a dress rehearsal. There is no second go round. Be intentional with what you do. Be intentional to love. Be intentional to kind. Because we live in a world that is full of hate, that is full of hurt, and that is full of division. And people should not get that from you. Be that beacon of hope. Be that beam of light. Be that ray of sunshine. Be that kindness. Be that smile that someone may need for the day.
Right on. Ladies, we're gonna wrap this up. Don't hang up. Just don't hang up. Y'all, thank you so much for joining us today on Sunday Sip with Sisters. Thank you, guests, for being with us. Y'all are just phenomenal women. I'm so blessed for y'all to be in my presence today and having this awesome conversation. And y'all, I will be back next week. Peace.
Peace.